The Colorado Buffaloes continue to get ready for their opening game against the TCU Horned Frogs, and one ESPN announcer has bucked the trend and predicted an absolute worst-case scenario for Colorado. We're going to tell you about that today, why it's important, and why he's ultimately wrong. But before we give the pessimists or the haters and doubters any attention or love, we're going to give some love to a special CBS analyst who had a much more optimistic point of view. Just before we get started, though, I do want to ask you guys a quick favor. If you have any topics that you want to hear about, ideas for videos, please reach out in the comments below. If we end up using your video idea, we'll put you on the thumbnail and give you a shout out and give you some love that you definitely deserve. So let's make this thing grow. Let me know what you guys want to hear about, and we'll get after it. CBS analyst Randy Cross predicted that Deion Sanders' Colorado debut will be an upset win. In a recent interview, the analyst said, "I'm not going to discount what Deion Sanders is going to do at Colorado, and I think it gets started with an upset win at TCU." Now, TCU is a pretty heavy favorite according to Vegas, and the betting lines are pretty high and not really in Colorado's favor here. But what multiple people in Vegas have said and continue to echo is they really just have no idea how to make these spreads for Colorado. Colorado brought in like 70 new players this year from high school and the portal combined, and that's a ridiculous amount of different talent that's out there for Vegas to try and figure out. Meanwhile, TCU was in the national championship game last year and had a pretty good season for all records. But they got absolutely destroyed in their game against Georgia, and they lost a ton of talent that left by graduating or finishing up their college careers. And so as big as that spread is for TCU and how big of a favorite they are, it really doesn't mean a lot because we just really have no idea what these two teams are going to look like week one. He wasn't the only one, Randy Cross, though, that was optimistic. Fox Sports analyst Joel Klatt predicted that Colorado will win at least one of its two first games. In case you forgot, the Buffalo's second game is against longtime enemy Nebraska. And I'll tell you this, if Colorado, who is going to be an underdog both times, can either beat TCU or Nebraska, or by some chance beat both of them, the national stage will be set, and the national attention will be on Boulder and Coach Prime. But not everyone thinks Coach Prime is going to be successful out of the gate, and here's what we'll get to today. ESPN analyst Mark Schlabach thinks that Colorado fans should prepare for the worst. During a recent interview, he said, "There has been plenty of hype and controversy surrounding Coach Deion Sanders' move from FCS program Jackson State to Colorado in the offseason. The Buffaloes are going to be one of the most compelling teams in the country, but they're not going to be very good. Colorado went 1-8 last season in the Pac-12, 1-11 overall, and Sanders and his staff tried to trade out Beans and Frank's ingredients for beef Wellington overnight. But it won't make much of a difference. It wouldn't be surprising to see TCU hang half 150 points on the Buffaloes in their September 2nd opener." Well, first of all, we need to tell Mark that this isn't England. We don't eat beef Wellington. We don't have our pinkies up drinking tea and crumpet. We don't drive on the wrong side of the road. And this is Coach Prime, and this is Colorado. Buffaloes eat prime rib, ribeye, filet mignons. We finish it with ice-cold beer. We watch football. We celebrate with friends. And then we wake up and do it again. So I don't understand the comments by Schlabach there, but let's get into it. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like Colorado's in good hands one way or the other. And that's not ultimately going to change based on whatever happens week one against TCU. They could win that game by 50 or they could lose that game by 50. And the hands that Colorado is in are still good. They're still going down the right path. They're still building towards something that's bigger than just the results of one game. It absolutely takes time to build a football program. People talk about when Coach Prime played, right, for Bobby Bowden. And did you know that Bobby's first season was a 500 record? It takes time to build a program. But then from there, he never had another season under 500. In nearly 40 years of coaching, never had another one at Florida State. The results of the first year, as excited as we are and as hyped up as we are for this first game against TCU, they don't matter. You win by 50, you lose by 50. You got to play the next week against Nebraska. You beat Nebraska, you lose, it doesn't matter. You got to play the next week. And so it just doesn't matter. And Schlabach's probably trying to just get clicks and probably just trying to be that guy in the media, but it doesn't matter. The amount of time that it takes to build each team is different for every coach. You've seen some coaches that have taken 3 and 4 and 5 years. I think about Dabo Swinney at Clemson. Folks were calling for his head. Folks wanted him fired because he couldn't get over the hump against FSU. He couldn't find a way to consistently win X number of games. And then the light bulb finally flipped on. And look what he's done there since then. Look at the success that he's had at Clemson. A couple of national titles, Heisman Trophy. They have been one of the programs of the last decade. In fact, maybe besides Georgia and Alabama, maybe the third best program of the last decade. Maybe the first, maybe second after Alabama. But it takes different amounts of time for every coach, and it's no different here. Anyone who is expecting Colorado to come out and go 15-0 this year and win the national championship is probably drinking a little bit too much of the Kool-Aid. But anyone who says that they won't be improved or they're not in the right hands or they're not on the right track is also just as wrong. The results on this field are something that a lot of people are going to make a big deal about. Whether they win 8 games, 4 games, 6 games, it doesn't matter. They're going to make a huge deal about the results on the field this year one. But ultimately, that's not what Coach Prime is going to be judged on. It's what he does with this program going forward. Personally, I'm not that stressed about it. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to enjoy this ride. Coach Prime is not only a great human, a great person, he's a great entertainer. I expect his teams to be entertaining. I expect them to be fun. I expect us to enjoy what we get to see on a week in and week out basis. And I'm going to sit back and enjoy the ride. I'm going to be looking for improvement game after game. Listen, this is a team that won 1 game last year and wasn't any good. I want to see improvement game over game over game. Not just game over game over game. I want to see improvement during the game. When something goes wrong, we talked about yesterday in our video yesterday how Desmond took that kickoff back for a touchdown, and Coach Prime took it on himself to go out and answer the bell and answer the call and go out and make the difference. That's what I'm going to be wanting to see. Improvement inside of the game. Does the team fight harder and smarter as the game goes on, or do they quit? Do they get down on themselves? When they play a good team that maybe has their number on any given Saturday, how do they respond? How do they react? Those are the things I'm looking for. Absolutely, we want to win. Absolutely, every single time that they lace them up, every time the Buffaloes hit the field, 12-0 is what we want. Is that realistic? How many teams are going 12-0 this year? Maybe Georgia, maybe Clemson, maybe Florida State. There aren't many. Maybe Ohio State, maybe Michigan. Maybe one of those teams does. But it's just not a very realistic point of view. And so Joe Klatt is probably the more right of the two. Schlabach just trying to be negative for no reason. I don't really understand it, but that's just how some people are. At the end of the day, what Coach Prime does over the long term, though, is what's going to matter. And what happens week 1 against TCU? We all want the win. Trust me, we all want the win. But I'm not giving up if the worst happens. If they win by 50, we'll be here talking about it. If they lose by 50, I might have a couple of tears in my eyes, but I'll be here talking about it. And that's all that really matters. And I know that you guys, as true Coach Prime and Buffalo supporters, are going to be the same exact way. Listen, I appreciate you guys a ton for tuning in. Just like Coach Prime, I'm trying to give 100% here, but I wouldn't have this and wouldn't have the opportunity to do this without you guys. So I appreciate it an absolute ton. If you have missed yesterday's video, if you're new to the channel, we talked about how Coach Prime expects 100% from his players at all times. And I want you to go check that video out right now.